My name is Walter. I am 101 years old. And 3 weeks ago, I found a letter in my dead son's desk that broke me open in a way that nothing in a century of living ever had. He died in February, 67 years old, heart attack. We were clearing out his apartment. My granddaughter handed it to me and said, "Grandpa, I think he wrote this for you." It had been sitting in that drawer, unsealed, for 11 years. I read it standing in the middle of his empty apartment, and I want to tell you what was in it, because it is the most important thing I will ever say out loud. But first, you need to understand who I am and what I did, because without that, the letter won't make sense. I was a factory supervisor for 35 years. I raised 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter, on my own after my wife passed when the youngest was 9. I was their mother and their father, and I believed with everything in me that the best thing I could give them was strength. I was wrong. And my son spent 11 years trying to figure out how to tell me that in a letter he never sent. To understand why he wrote it, and why it took him 11 years, you have to understand what our home looked like, what I built it to look like. When Carol died, my wife, the children were 14, 11, and 9. And I made a decision, standing over her grave, that I was not going to fall apart. Because if I fell apart, they would fall apart. So I held it together, every single day. I didn't cry in front of them, not once. I kept working. I kept the house running. I kept meals on the table and clothes washed and homework checked. And when they cried, I held them. But I always said the same thing. You're going to be okay. You're strong. We're going to be okay. I thought I was teaching them resilience. I thought I was showing them how to survive. What I didn't realize, what nobody told me and I was too proud to consider, was that there is a difference between teaching a child to be strong and teaching a child that feelings are a weakness, that crying is a problem to be solved, that needing someone is something to be ashamed of. I thought I was raising survivors. I was raising people who didn't know how to let anyone in. I lived with that belief for over 60 years. I was proud of it. And then 3 weeks ago, standing in my dead son's apartment, I found out exactly what it had done to him. Thomas's letter was 4 pages long, handwritten. His handwriting, he always had terrible handwriting like mine. I'm not going to read all of it to you, but I'll tell you what it said. He wrote, "Dad, I've been in therapy for 6 years. My therapist keeps asking me to write this and I keep throwing it away. So this time I'm keeping it, even if I never send it." He wrote, "I have never been able to tell my wife that I love her without feeling like I'm doing something dangerous. I don't know how to need someone without feeling like I'm failing. I don't know where that came from, except I do know. I watched you survive Mom's death by turning yourself to stone, and I learned that that's what you do when things get hard. You go stone." He wrote, "I don't blame you. I know you did your best. But I need you to know that your best left a hole in me that I have spent my entire adult life trying to fill with the wrong things. Work, distance, being in control. I am 66 years old and I still don't know how to be loved without wanting to run from it." 4 pages, 11 years in a drawer. He died before he gave it to me. I stood in that empty apartment and I could not move for a long time. And standing there, I finally understood something I should have understood 50 years ago. Something I need to say to you now. I want to say something that is going to be hard to hear, especially if you are a parent, especially if you are proud of how strong you raised your children to be. Strength is not the same as wholeness. You can raise a child who never breaks down and also raise a child who never fully opens up. You can raise a child who handles everything, the bills, the crisis, the hard conversation, and also raise a child who goes to bed every night next to their spouse feeling completely alone. because they learned, somewhere early, that needing people is the thing you don't do. I taught my children to hold it together. What I forgot to teach them was that it is also okay, necessary, to fall apart sometimes in front of someone who loves you. That's not weakness. That's intimacy. That's the whole point of having people in your life. Thomas wrote that he went stone when things got hard. He learned that from me. I went stone at 38 years old, standing over Carol's grave, and I never really came back from it. I called it strength for 60 years. What it actually was a man who was terrified of being that broken again. So he made sure he'd never need anyone enough to break. And then I handed that to my children, gift-wrapped. Called it resilience. Don't do that, please. Don't hand your fear to your children and call it a virtue. And here is what haunts me most. I could see it happening. In my own family, right in front of me. I just never knew how to name it. My daughter Patricia has been married twice. Her first husband told her during the divorce that he felt like he was married to someone who was always slightly out of reach. Always competent, always capable, always fine. He said he never really knew if she needed him. He said that got lonely. She called and told me that after the divorce was finalized. She wasn't angry when she said it. She just said, "Dad, I think I learned how to not need people a little too well." She laughed. But it wasn't a funny laugh. It was the laugh of someone who has figured out something too late to fully fix it. And I knew, hearing her say those words, that I had put that laugh in her. I had built it into her, brick by brick, year by year. Every time I said, "You're strong," instead of, "I've got you." It was not just Patricia. I started to see it everywhere. Once Thomas's letter had opened my eyes. And the hardest moment came not from my own family, but from a stranger. A few years ago, I was in the waiting room of my doctor's office. There was a young father there, maybe 35, with a boy who was crying. The boy had hurt his hand, and this father, instead of saying, "You're okay, stop crying," sat down on the floor of that waiting room and pulled his son into his lap and said, "I know it hurts. Let it hurt for a minute. I've got you." I watched that and felt something I don't have a clean word for. Grief, maybe, or recognition. That was the thing I never said. Not, "You'll be fine." Not, "You're strong." Just, "I've got you." 3 words I never once said to my children, and that father said them without a second thought. The one thing I did right, and I did it only once, and it was almost too late, was the day my younger son Robert called me to say his marriage was struggling. I was 94, and for the first time in my life I said, "Robert, it's okay to need her. It's not weak. Needing the person you love is the whole point." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Why didn't you ever say that before?" I didn't have an answer. But he's still married. And I'd like to think that call was part of why. One honest sentence. 94 years in the making. That is what I am asking you to do right now, before another decade passes. I want to speak directly to the parents watching this. If you have ever told your child you're okay when they weren't, just to stop the crying, just to move through the discomfort faster, I want you to sit with that for a second. I want you to ask yourself, what did your child learn in that moment? They learned that their feelings are an inconvenience. They learned that the correct response to pain is to perform being fine. And then they grew up and took that into every relationship they ever had. I know you meant well. I know you thought you were helping. I know, because that was me for decades. I genuinely believed that toughening them up was an act of love. It took a letter from my dead son to show me what it actually was. Ask yourself right now, Can your child call you when they are falling apart? Not to get advice, not to be fixed, just to fall apart? Or have you, without meaning to, become someone they have to perform being okay for? That is the question Thomas's letter put in me, and I cannot unknow it. You still have time to answer it differently than I did, but you have to start now. So here is what I need you to do. I am 101 years old. Thomas is gone. I cannot give him back what I didn't give him when he was here. But you are still in time. Call your child today, or your parent, or whoever you have been performing strength for, and say the thing you have been not saying. Not the fixed version, the real one. If these stories matter to you, subscribe. There are more of them. People like me at the end of things, saying what we should have said sooner. And leave me a comment. Tell me one thing you were taught about strength that you now wonder about. I read every single one. Share this with someone who needs permission to stop going stone.